When I was young, every day I go to forest, seeing the nature and the wildlife. I start seeing the forest being cutting down, the animal being hunted. When I was around 10 years old, I saw the two poachers. They took out with one mother with a baby pangolin, and they put in the bag and took home. The mother tried to protect the baby, but she cannot, and that is something I feel really sad. My dream job is to become a ranger, to protect the forest. I saw many wildlife conservation programs. They have a time to start and finish. After they finish, everything is disappear very quickly. So I really want to build up a non-profit organization in Vietnam with the Vietnamese leadership and try to make it like long-term and stable. I started working with Leanne since 2006. So Leanne came in with her experience working with wildlife. So when we start with the pangolin conservation in Vietnam, it's the first pangolin rescue center exists in Asia.
And we called it the Pangolarium. That was the little enclosure. And like everything happens, the first pangolins arrived before it was finished. We were told that there were 5 pangolins for us to rescue. And we turned up to the ranger station and there were just pangolins in sacks, curled up in balls on the ground. And I remember seeing a motorbike with a pangolin on it. We were told that we could take the 5 that were most likely to survive. And I remember us driving home that night with those pangolins and we were half elated, but also devastated because they're registered wildlife traders, and so the rest of the animals were auctioned to legal wildlife traders. We got back to find the crew still busily building and trying to finish this enclosure for them. And when we let the pangolins in and they ate.
They are very difficult species to keep in captivity. We don't know how to feed them, what type of medicine, how to treat for them.
Very little was known about pangolins, very little was written. There wasn't many people working on them and we just saw a need.
We start watching them every night for like 3 months. Every night we just wake up from 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. watching the animal and see how they are doing.
We became really attuned to the sound of them waking up and eating, and they sniff, so the first thing they do is they come out and they sniff. Some of them would be awake for 9 minutes, but we would sit there all night, freezing.
The pangolin is very special. They are covered by the scale. To protect themselves, they just queue up into the bowl and no other animal can eat them. They're very shy. Compared with many other species, the pangolin is very slow. So they're very confident and they just stay in the burrow and not moving very far.
This is the most traded mammal in the world. We will drive this animal to extinction. They will become extinct without doubt because people like to eat them or use their scales in traditional medicine.
After they cut the pangolin, they tie the pangolin very strong so the animal cannot move to make the animals heavier before they selling to another trader. They try to forfeit the animal. They make powder together with water and egg and they pump inside the belly. Sometimes they use syringe to inject the water under skin. So animal often very weak during the chase. A lot of animal dies very quickly.
I am really surprised at how little people's understandings have changed. There certainly has not been a cessation in trade despite COVID. The trade's reach just gets wider and wider, so it's completely an international trade now, and we have not just pangolins, reptiles and birds, mammals from all over the world, making their way along different trade routes to some of the major markets. It's an absolute melting pot of species and all different organisms, not just viruses, being shared to animals that are naive, and then people and their domestic livestock. The wildlife trade will remain a threat for human health while the wildlife trade continues. That's a given.
In Vietnam, we start using the new technology like poacher cam. So whenever they take the picture of the poacher, they send directly to one of the phone number ranger, and then we can organize to catch them.
People will often say, oh, well, what's a rescue centre going to do? Well, it allows law enforcement to happen, because the rangers who are doing the confiscating, they know that these animals can actually go to a rescue centre, and there is hope, and it does mean something what they're doing.
We got information from the police in Bắc Cạn province in the north of Vietnam near China. The animal been transported illegally from cross the border between Laos into Vietnam and heading to China. The police did confiscate them and call me.
If those animals are being confiscated on the border of China, they could have been captured in Indonesia or Thailand or Laos. They are not necessarily from Vietnam, so those animals potentially have been in a long and really horrible journey up to that point. They're dehydrated, they might be injured. You have to have people who know how to look after them as well.
Together with 3 other pangolins. The mother, when she came to the center, the vet team, they scanned and they saw she have a baby about 4 months old. Because the baby is already quite big, so we keep her in the center and she give birth.
Thì mối là một cái cá thể tê tê thì khá là nhút nhát, thì thường là khá là nhút nhát và thường xuyên là nằm cuộn tròn ở trong bụng của mẹ. Mối chỉ mới hơn 4 tháng tuổi thôi, tuy thế là mối đã có khả năng là tự tìm kiếm thức ăn cũng như là ăn các cái tổ kiến sống ở ngoài tự nhiên. Và rất là hạnh phúc khi mà được chứng kiến, khi tôi được trực tiếp chứng kiến mối và mẹ của mối được trở lại tự nhiên vào tháng 4 vừa rồi.
We transport them into the forest, and in the night time we start release them because pangolins are nocturnal.
Anyone who's involved in wildlife rescue and rehabilitation, the aim is always release. That's why we do this. And so it's such an amazing experience, because you've done everything you can and off they go.
We have an anti-poaching team and they are still daily spend time patrol in that area. But so far we haven't heard if they seeing moose or mother. I think because the forest is very dense and I think they are happy in the forest at the moment.
One of the criteria for release to the wild is that the threat has been mitigated, that we've already managed that threat. And we haven't. We haven't. There's a massive trade, and there is all likelihood that some of those pangolins end up back in that trade again. How absolutely heartbreaking is that?
We rescue over 2,000 individual animals from illegal wildlife chase. Nearly 60% of them are being released back to the wild. So we start seeing the recovery of the wildlife in the forest in Vietnam. We need to get everyone together we can save the wildlife, save pangolin. I believe we can do it if we together take action.